I need you to knock some sense into me. I'm sure you can.
Yeah, I don't know. I enjoy listening to you. I don't always agree with everything. All right. Enough of this persiflage.
So, you want my question?
I'm certainly not going to get myself in trouble by telling you what to do.
That makes great sense. Gosh, that's good.
Did I overwhelm you with words and wisdom?
I've got 7 kids. I feel like I could call you every day.
Wait, you're telling me I'm wrong?
Yes, I am, Dr. Ray.
You just need to tune in to Dr. Ray, honey. He's got all the answers.
Am I right or am I right?
Probably.
Now, from the studios of Living Bread Radio Network in Canton, Ohio, the hometown of Mother Angelica, here's Dr. Ray.
You may be familiar with the long-ago movie, The Incredible Shrinking Man. This is our EWTN Ave Maria radio program counterpart. The Incredible Manly Shrink. I'm Dr. Ray Grandy, and I am a shrink. People say, where'd that name come from? Where did shrink come from? Well, as nicknames are wont to do, they tend to consolidate. The medicine man, or the shaman, or whoever it was in tribal situations, may have worked his supposed magic by shrinking heads. Now, I don't know all of the details and what that involves, but he got the name Head Shrinker. These shrunken heads, and the shrunken heads were supposed to do something. I know, Andrew, if you're there, you can look it up on the internet and see exactly what it means, what it entails. So that naturally gravitated over to people who work with the mind in a kind of colloquial, semi-pejorative sort of way. He's a head shrink. He shrinks heads. Well, got shortened to shrink. The guy's a shrink. People don't know where the etiology came from, but that, as I understand it, is the etiology. So, just a little tidbit there if you ever come across that question on Jeopardy. Or you see it on, what's the name of the show right before Jeopardy, where you name that letter or whatever it is. What is that, Andrew? That one with Vanna White. He's not listening. I think he went to the bathroom. I'm Dr. Ray. Program here. Doctor is in. The variant of the program, E-Person Monday. I had to do something with the many emails we get, both from radio and television. We get a lot from television. My producer man says on the TV show, we'd like to hear from you. Send your emails to drray.com. There's a contact page there. And so we'll get some of those. We will attack those. Wheel of Fortune, isn't it? Is that the one with the letters, Vanna White? Kind of like going from kindergarten to your PhD in 1 hour. We'll get to those momentarily. I did a program relatively recently on mother's intuition. Now, what exactly is intuition? People think that intuition is some kind of sense that you cannot reasonably explain. It's beyond reason. You see, it's a gut level feeling. It is that, but it's more than that. Let me draw a parallel to fighting a fire. The guys, the ladies, go into a burning building, and one of the more experienced firefighters says, "Get out, get out, get out, get out now!" And everybody's thinking, why? We're moving into the building, we're going to fight the fire, and he's screaming, get out now. So they listen. He's got some credibility. Within a matter of a few seconds after they leave, the ceiling collapses. Would have hurt him or would have killed him. And they ask him, how'd you know that? He said, I don't know. I just something hit me. I just had a feeling something was about gonna happen bad. Well, if you stopped and analyzed it, took the time to look back, what you would find was, because of his experience, he picked up on very subtle cues that something was about to happen. Maybe he heard a crack somewhere, but it didn't register. He just heard the crack. Or he saw a flame, and in his past experience, where that flame was resulted in collapsed ceilings. Now, at the time, he didn't think, oh, wait, yes, I heard that crack. Okay. And then, oh, the flame over there. Yeah, you combine that crack with the flame, I can see that. And, oh, I just noticed that one joist, that was a support joist, and that was the one that was, ooh, it was burned through by about 2/3. We better get out of here. No. It all happened in an instant. Intuition. Intuition is experience. You take your car to a mechanic, and he listens to the engine. He says, something doesn't sound right. Something just doesn't sound right. What is it? I don't know. And the person who drove the car and said, "What doesn't sounds normal to me." So it's always sounded. The guy goes, no, it doesn't sound normal. Now, how does he know that? Well, he's listened to thousands of engines. Sometimes people will come into my office, and they'll describe a scenario to me. And as they talk, I'm thinking, something's not sounding right. I don't quite know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but something is not sounding right here. There's a piece of the puzzle, a big piece of the puzzle that's missing. Now, at the moment, I can't explain what it was. I can't explain why I had that sense. Later on, if I had time to sit and analyze, I'd go, you know what it was? Remember when she said, and then it would come to me. So intuition is kind of your mind like a supercomputer processing a whole bunch of information all at once. And some of it is below your conscious awareness at the moment. I'm sure there are those of you who have been in situations that you had a very uneasy feeling about. And you didn't know what it was. What is making me uneasy about this feeling? Or uneasy about this situation? Later on, as you got in your car and you drove away, you remember thinking, there was a white van 3 parking places away with 2 guys talking, but they didn't look like they were all that interested in talking to each other. They looked like they were trying to blend into the woodwork and be oblivious for some reason. And that caused that uneasy sense in you. But you didn't really know that at the time. You couldn't say, gee, there's 2 guys over there looking like they're carrying on a conversation, but they're not really carrying on a conversation. The one guy looks like he's looking at me out of the corner of his eye, and I don't know what they're up to, but I don't like it. No, you didn't do that at the moment. You just thought, I got to get in my car and get out of here. Your intuition was protection. It told you. Do mothers have intuition? They do. But they have it on the basis of experience. The lady who was interviewing me asked me, well, then, would more children give you better intuition? And I said, as a general rule, all other things being equal, yes. It's like the mom who hears a toddler cry and instinctively knows that's a serious cry. This is not a frustrating cry. This is not a disappointing cry. This is a major league hurt cry. And someone without a kid wouldn't recognize the difference. But mom has heard enough variance in the many cries that she's heard over the years, because she's had a bunch of kids, to know that is a cry that I better get in there quick. intuition is processing a whole lot of information, sometimes below your conscious awareness, forcing you to make a move or to come to a conclusion. Later on, if someone helped you analyze whatever factors were at play in you coming to that conclusion, you'd say, yeah, that's what it was. So intuition isn't so magical, but it is a skill. I'm Dr. Ray.
Relax. The doctor is in.
I was looking to buy my wife some perfume. I went over to the counter and I was asking the lady about the various fragrances, and she kept mentioning all these flowers. I'm thinking to myself, okay, so the women wear these fragrances that smell like flowers, but guys aren't as attracted to the fragrance of flowers that women are. I'm going to market a whole series of scents that I think that guys would be attracted to. For example, new car interior. How about that one, huh? Weight room. The fragrance of a weight room. Axle grease. New from Ray Grindy. Axle grease. Or, I like this one, softball field dust. Has a certain fragrance to it. You know, I'm going to market a whole line of those. I think guys would be attracted to that stuff. Hi, Dr. Ray. My son is interested in becoming a psychologist or psychiatrist. It is hard to find anyone who have that bent, a Catholic bent, here in our town. He will be a senior this year in high school, and he will be going to school at, and then she gives the college, which is a public college. I was hoping that he could get some words of wisdom. I hope she wasn't hoping those are coming from me, on how to go about going to school for this and not get jaded by beliefs or ideas that are against his Catholic faith. Well, I'm going to make a little personal confession here. Yes, I went to college, and my senior year, I really began my intense psychology education through grad school. At the time, I was Catholic. At the time, I still went to Mass. I hadn't drifted from the faith. However, I got influenced. I definitely got influenced by the psychological perspective of morality, of the human condition. It was only, well, I will share with you a specific. One of the things that we were told repeatedly was that you take no moral stance. You do not explore religious beliefs. Even then I remember thinking, but the majority of people have some sense of religious beliefs. And obviously those are intertwined with their conduct. So if those are off limits and you're attempting to understand why this person does what they do or why they feel what they feel or why they're struggling with what they're struggling with, their religious beliefs may be a big part of this. But we were told, stay away, stay away. Total non-judgmental. Now, I understand the non-judgmental part. I got that part. But what they were saying was you just take this doggedly, absolutely neutral stance. First of all, you can't do that. Because if somebody comes into your office wanting to leave his wife and 5 kids, and you just take a total neutral stance, well, whatever makes you happy. that could be something that will be problematic in their lives, even stripped of religion. So that said, that's my confession. Lately, I have had a number of graduate students ask me, my faith is very important to me. However, the education that I'm getting directly counters some of my deepest held beliefs. Directly, flat out. What do I do? I said, well, you are in the coursework, and so you attempt to understand their thinking, even though you don't agree with it. And you, in your own mind, recognize that this is coming from a particular perspective, and it isn't automatically correct simply because somebody says it is. You look at a lot of other factors, and not the least of which is the research, because the research in many ways parallels traditional moral beliefs. In some respects, you have to keep your head down. I've had people say that I've had professors who have allowed me to express my viewpoints on this and the reasoning behind my viewpoints, and they're open to it, and they listen to it, and they respect it. And I've had others say, absolutely not, I'll flunk out. You have to judge where that is. When I was going through grad school, as I said, I wasn't of the Catholic embrace that I am now. So I had a little more wiggle room in listening to a lot of the stuff that we were supposedly taught. If I were to go back now with my belief system as it sits now, I still think I could be a very good psychologist, because I recognize that people who come to you may have a religious base, and their faith would play a very big role in how they want to live their lives, and you have to respect that. I would also say that, first of all, I deal with people who do not at all come from a religious perspective in their conduct. They are either indifferent or, in some cases, absolutely neglectful of any kind of religious worldview. Okay. I will deal with them from the perspective of what will be the results, potentially, of their choices and their decisions. How is everything affecting them right now? Certainly isn't counter-religious. On the other hand, it's perfectly appropriate to ask somebody, are you a religious person, or where does your faith play in this, or how does what you believe from a religious worldview affect this? That's a perfectly legitimate line of questioning, and they can tell you. They can say, well, I think part of the guilt that I feel is the way I was raised, because my mother raised me a certain way, and when I did this, she made me feel I was so terrible a person. All right. That's fodder for exploration. You can do that. Some people will say, how do I find a therapist that would respect my worldview? Somebody comes in for marriage counseling, and they do not want a divorce, though the situation for both of them is very discontent. And, in fact, if they went to other therapists, they might hear, you just need to separate. You're so miserable. You got to find a way to find happiness on your own. That would be the direction of a particular therapist. But to respect that they say, no, this is how we view marriage as a commitment before God. You have to respect that. So you don't approach this as, well, okay, but the more you people talk, the more I'm just convinced. I'm thinking you just need to to go your own separate ways. Because that's not respecting what they're saying regarding the overarching principle, which is, I don't want to leave the marriage. We've got to try to solve this within the context of the marriage. The option is not seeking some kind of personal independence. And good therapists will respect that. Many people come to me because they're convinced I will respect their moral religious worldview. They don't want somebody telling them they're neurotic or they're out of step, or because they didn't give their 13-year-old a smartphone because they don't want to, they don't want somebody telling them, no, you need to give her a smartphone for her social development. You need to give her a smartphone to relate to her peers. You need to give her a smartphone because if you don't, she'll be resentful and that'll cause family friction. They don't want to hear that because they're the parent, and given their morals and values, the smartphone would not be in their favor. And I've had a lot of people come into my office and say, this is the decision I made as a parent, and the therapist told me I was wrong. And I remember thinking, well, it's not a matter of being right or wrong. It's a matter of, as a parent, do they have the right to make that decision, even though it's not in the majority of the culture? And they do. And they got very frustrated because they were told by the therapist, you're psychologically incorrect. And they're saying, well, no, given the way I want to raise my child morally, this particular freedom is not good. But the therapist advising them otherwise. That's why it's so important to talk to a potential therapist before you go. Find out what their approach is, how they view people with a religious bent. Are they even comfortable viewing people with a religious bent? Do they even know what being religious means?
If you've noticed improved sound from 990 AM, you'd not only be correct, but you have yourselves to thank. Donors like you to our Strong Towers Foundation is allowing us to make some improvements. Ave Maria Radio has a lot to go, but we wanted to thank you and share the small victories so that we can continue to transform lives while offering hope, guidance, and truth to all those that are searching. The Pious Union of St. Joseph's has now completed their Holy Rosary Project with incredible life-size statues of all 20 mysteries of the Rosary on their beautiful shrine grounds in Grass Lake. Join them for the dedication Mass and the statue blessing with Bishop Boyer at 5 p.m. on Monday, September 15th, with the reception to follow. The event is free, but RSVPing is required by September 8th. Register today at pusj.org. That's pusj.org.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Ray Garandi. We know personally that when a loved one passes suddenly, we are relieved that a will was already in place. At mycatholicwill.com, a legal will is as simple as 15 minutes filling out information about your family. Thanks to our partnership with mycatholicwill.com, when you use the promo code AVE, A-V-E, your will is absolutely free. No hidden costs whatsoever. Visit mycatholicwill.com.
Colleen Kelly Mast has Mast Appeal.
Do you need some tips on getting along with your family members? Are you trying to figure out the right thing to do when everyone else is going in different directions? Are you struggling with a personal problem and need help with the next step to take? Join me live each week and call in with your questions or personal problems. Listen to Mast Appeal each Saturday morning, and maybe you can prevent some problems too.
Mast Appeal, Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 on this Ave Maria radio station.
Thank you for joining me, Dr. Ray Guridia, Psychological Pit Bull. Hopefully more pit than bull. Nice to have you here. This is E-Person Monday. This is where we, well, notice how I include you in this? We. I guess you could more accurately say this is where I address the various emails, and I'm going to say emails every once in a while, risking being gender insensitive. Because I got to do something here. I got a stack sitting in front of me, so I got to get to the ones that I can. Dear Dr. Ree, thank you for addressing personal finance and, quote, not having enough to give to the church, period, quote. Yeah, I've spoken about that. It seems our Lord has talked by far the most about giving. By far. If you look at the Gospels, so many of his lessons and his preaching has to do with sharing a lot. And unfortunately, as we live so very, very well in America, that indeed, I don't want to give you a negative stat, but you know what percentage Catholics give? It's 1.5%. A far cry from the Old Testament standard of tithing 10%. Nevertheless, I talk about that. I say, well, okay, it's not a matter of you're going to live in a pup tent, but it's a matter of making judgments. What kinds of purchases are necessary or are something I just want? You know, I'd like to have an $80,000 brand new vehicle and spread it out in payments. I could probably afford that. But my question is why? If I would do something like that, I would have 6 years of approximately $800 to $1,000 a month car payment, which means I'd have to earn about $1,500 to make that car payment after taxes. So the question becomes, I could tell my church, or I could tell various radio stations, or I could tell various charities, yeah, I would like to, but man, I got bills. Yeah, but I put that one bill on myself. I wasn't content to drive a car that was much cheaper, but still a nice car, but used, 3 years used, so I paid $28,000 for it, or $32,000 for it, rather than $80,000. That's the point I need to make. Where do I choose to live? How big's my house? Now, as Christians, I think those are things we have to ask ourselves. We can't simply say, well, I can afford it, therefore I'll do it. And yeah, whatever money I got left over, I'll give to charity, the church, I'll give to various males that come to me and ask. I think that's just so critical. I watch churches beg for money. Even the radio. You know, if we gave what we could give because we made a little more prudential judgments in how we spent our money, we could do a lot more to support spreading the faith. She goes on. Most people do seem to let their lifestyle eat up almost all of their income. That's true. That is absolutely true. We tend to live up to our income or over. Even Christians. I would have to say probably the majority, maybe the vast majority of Christians. I saw another disturbing statistic. Catholics give 1.5%. Non-Christians give 2.5%. Now, they may not give it to churches. They may give it to the orchestra, or they may give it to the Animal Protective League. But they support other charitable institutions that aren't necessarily religious. I had my parents as a good example, she says. I still didn't get it until my mother died. Then it came to my attention that, quote, the Bank of Mom was closed. And what was I going to do about my own retirement? I had to get my financial house in order. What she's saying is, yeah, it was pretty cool while Mom was still alive, you know, I could head for the bank. But then that ended. Mom lived well below her income in retirement. What people saw was an old lady living in an undistinguished neighborhood and driving a 10-year-old car. So they naturally concluded that she was poor and kept telling her where she could get free lunches for retirees. You see what they did? They looked at her and couldn't digest that she was capable of living in a bigger house or a different neighborhood or driving a newer car. That why would she not want to? My main car, this is kind of sad, it's kind of pathetic really, is a 2002 Buick LeSabre. It's an old man's car. I have to drive with the turn signal on. I have to wear a hat. And I got a bobbing dog in the back window. Now, why would I do that? Well, about 7 years ago, I was driving down the street, and I saw this immaculate-looking LeSabre, about 15-year-old car. It was just perfect. I thought, whoa! So I went up to look at it, and I thought, well, I'll get closer to it. It'll start to show its rattiness. No. The closer I got, it looked like it was driven off a showroom floor. So I went up to the gentleman, and I said, sir, what are you asking for this car? He said, $6,000. Now, book value for that car at that time, 15 years old, this was 8 years ago, was not $6,000. It was probably about $3,500, $3,000. I said, was this your car? It was very low mileage. He said, no, it was my mother's. She passed away. I looked at this thing. Oh, it's perfect. Now, it didn't have all the bells and whistles of a new car, that's for sure. But I bought that Buick for $6,000, and I'm still driving it 8 years later. Now, it's going to die here shortly, and I'm going to definitely move up into the late 20 teens. But the point is, because of that, I had a little more disposable income to look around to see what could I support, what could I do. And I still had a nice car. It wasn't that I denied myself. Only if you look at it like I didn't have the latest and greatest. I'll talk a little bit more about what she's talking about after the break. Dr. Ray Guarendi here, program The Doctor is in. I gotta admit it, my Buick is getting a little ratty. I do have another car. It's a 2009. It's a lot nicer, but it's still 16 years old. And you realize, my wife has a 2020 Buick Encore, and you realize how much technologically cars have changed even in the last 10, 15 years. Wild. So anyway, I'm going to go on with what this dear lady wrote about finding out that her mom lived below her means. And perhaps Mom decided that I can give more to people and situations. And she's finding this out. She says, I seem to be following my mother's example. When I go out to eat with my friends, we're all in our mid-60s now, and I have retired and they can't afford to. How do I get them to let me pay? Oh, that's easy. You either sneak the check grab it aggressively, or you just excuse yourself to go to the bathroom, find your waitress or your server, and you say, bring me the check, please. That's it. Easy enough to do. You got it. Most people aren't going to arm wrestle you for it. And she has something that's somewhat unrelated here, but I want to answer it. She's a loyal listener because she has written me before. What is a nervous breakdown? Is it an actual diagnosis or just something we laypersons say because we don't know any better? It's not an actual diagnosis. It is an off-the-cuff colloquialism that is a broad term that incorporates anything from an actual psychotic break with reality to someone being so severely depressed that they are either hospitalized or immobile from their day-to-day activities. In other words, it is anything that is a severe inability to cope. Nerves don't break down. We say someone has a nervous breakdown because, for whatever the reason, it is way out of the norm of their ability to live their life. It could be that they're bedbound because they're so depressed. It could be that they're so anxious they can't leave the house. It could be that they're hospitalized because of suicidal ideation. It could be because they're on heavy medication because they're hearing voices. A nervous breakdown is a layperson's term, and it means they've lost the ability to function, either temporarily or indefinitely. All right? So let's go out. So we got to see what else. I got to go to the phone now. Dr. Ray. My sister lives out of state. I'm going to visit her soon. I'm the only Catholic in my family, and I'm trying to work on being less timid about standing up for my faith. I've always gone to church with my sister at her Protestant church when I'm in town, so I don't cause conflict. I guess my question is, why would that cause conflict? I mean, why would it cause conflict if you didn't go and you went to Mass? The only way that would cause conflict is if she would get angry because you're Catholic and somehow you're not a Christian, or you're Catholic and you're foolish, or you're Catholic and therefore that's stupid. The conflict has to come from her direction. I want to start going to Mass when I visit her. My question is whether I'm being selfish. Huh? How is that? To want to live what you believe is selfish? Unless she expects you to go to church with her, unless she is of the mindset that says, well, look, you're living here for 3 days, I'm feeding you, I'm traipsing you around, so you owe me something. I mean, unless she's giving you that message, but even if she is, that's not selfish. That's her interpretation. She adds a little detail here. I don't want to come across like I disrespect her religious beliefs or like I'm being judgmental. So what you're saying is, now it's starting to flesh out a little bit. What you're saying is, if I don't go with her, she could take that as that I don't think her particular religious expression is as good as mine. It sounds like that's your fear, and I don't know if that's based on anything. I don't know if that's the kind of vibe she's giving you or not. But even so, there's no way you can interpret you're going to Mass as being disrespectful of her. And if she interprets it that way, then sadly, she's way out of line. My time with the Eucharist is really limited given that I can't drive. Okay, that adds it. All right. I got it. So in other words, she'd have to take you to Mass unless you got some kind of other transportation. Now, I don't, again, when when I get these e-persons, I read them the first time through, and I think, okay, let's put that in the queue. But then I forget where they go, and that's kind of fun for me because I want to see what things I can anticipate, whether I miss it or whether I hit it. I've also been giving up going to Mass on holidays or on vacation so I don't inconvenience my family. Well, when you say you're the only Catholic in your family, then they all go to some type of Protestant service, or they don't go to anything, and for you to go to Mass would be, quote-unquote, an interruption in whatever family activities they have planned. You know, they're having breakfast on Sunday morning, they're all gone to breakfast, and you'd like to go to 9 o'clock Mass, but they've scheduled breakfast at 9:30, and so that puts you in a situation of, oh boy, I can't drive, so somebody's going to have to miss breakfast to take me to Mass. I could understand that in that rather exclusive example, but it doesn't seem to be that would be the routine example. I'm disabled. Okay, now that's another critical detail. And I don't drive. And people feel obligated to give me rides, even though I offer to take a lift. Okay, you are perfectly capable to take a lift. They may feel obligated, but if you volunteer to take a lift and they say, no, we're going to take you, well, okay, that's their decision. You're not being selfish now. It makes it trickier, especially when I want to go to confession or do other things that we Catholics do. I'm working on it, but I'm not going to win any apologetics awards, and I can't keep my head in a theological argument if it gets heated. I just don't want to ever be thought of as selfish or judgmental, and then not to be able to articulate why I'm insisting on going to church. You don't have to give theological reasons. I'm sure you're very capable of expressing in a very simple way, I'm Catholic. The Mass is extremely important to us because we believe that the Eucharist is the body and blood of Christ, and I want to be there. And my church says I need to be there. That's it. You don't have to say any arguments from Scripture on why the Eucharist is what we Catholics believe. You don't have to say arguments from history or logic or physics. You don't have to do any of that. Now, if what you're saying is you're going to get a lot of hostile resistance, that's a different ballgame. Because it may be for you to practice your faith when you go visit your sister or their family, that they're not going to easily accept that this is what you believe. I'm going to stretch it a bit further. You say I'm handicapped. I don't know if they view your handicap as part of the reason why you're Catholic, because you really just don't see things as well as you should. I don't know. Could be. But you're not in any way being selfish, and you're certainly not willing to inconvenience anyone because you're willing to take a lift. You've offered that. You could do what I did when I was first coming back to the church. I went to 7:30 Mass and went with my wife to the 9 o'clock service at her evangelical church. That's what I did. So I did both. You could do both, except if they have their memorial meal of bread or grape juice or whatever it is, you don't partake in that, because you're not saying this is what I believe our Lord meant to leave us. Dr. Ray.
Don't touch that dial. Dr. Ray will be back.
Well, I don't always time this as well as I should. Looking at the clock there, I got about 2.5-3 minutes left in the program. Barely enough time to read an e-person, much less make comments. So I think I'll do what I typically do. I'll pull something from C.S. Lewis. This is from his book, Mere Christianity. If anyone would like to acquire humility, I can, I think, tell him the first step. The first step is to realize that one is proud. And a biggish step, too. Yeah, biggish. Apparently that is English talk from Great Britain area back when Lewis was writing. At least nothing whatever can be done before realizing that one is proud. If you think you are not conceited, it means you are very conceited indeed. I'd like to extrapolate from CS here. I know that's pretty arrogant of me to think I can add to some of Lewis's insights about the faith and life, but I think you can draw a parallel to I'm a good person. That's a nonsense statement. Because to say you're a good person, you have to have a standard to compare your personhood to. What is your standard? If you define the standard, then in your mind you are a good person. Matter of fact, you're a 100% good person because you've defined the standard. But what if the culture defines the standard? And you say, well, I'm a good person, I don't kill anybody. I pay my taxes. I don't run around on my wife. I haven't punched anybody in the face since I was a kid. So I guess I'm a pretty good person. Well, the first thing I would say is that's an absence of negatives. I don't do this group of negative things that I think a good person shouldn't do. All right, that's one aspect. But what if the culture decides something that is good and it changes? You know, our culture 100 years ago was almost uniform. Killing a baby in a womb was very, very bad. Very bad. Whether you believed in God or whether you didn't, that was just wrong, man. You're killing another very, very early human being. Well, our society doesn't think that uniformly anymore. Matter of fact, the movers and shakers and the intelligentsia think it's a good thing. So, if you believe it's okay to kill a baby, even as it's being born, because that's the way it is in a lot of states now, is that good? Society says it is. So when you say you're a good person, do you decide that on the basis of what society says is okay? You leave your wife and kids because you're just discontent. That's all. I'm just unhappy. Well, society says you should be happy. And the culture says that you should look out for number one. So therefore, whatever impact that could have on your kids is really secondary to whatever impact it has on you. So really, that doesn't affect your goodness as a person, because the society says so. Somebody said to me once, a person who says, I'm a good person, really needs to question that, because truly good people don't say, I'm a good person. Thanks for joining me here on The Doctor Is In. Appreciate it so very, very much. Thanks, Andrew Kruchek, here on this E-Person Monday. Good Lord permit, and tomorrow get a chance to talk to you. We can interface or inter-ear. Walk with God. That'll help you be a better person.
For information on Dr. Ray's presentations, books, and CDs, visit drray.com and follow him on Facebook and Instagram. The Doctor Is In is a co-production of Ave Maria Radio and EWTN Radio and carried across the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.